on the Niagara Fall. Take 2.
The village of Little Kineton is just a dot on the map, and only then if it's a detailed one. Villages in Britain, last June they began preparing their Jubilee tea party. Games for the kids, tea for the old folk, and beer for the men. Only, it never really happened. This is a story of the biggest disaster to ever hit Little Kineton, and how the people came through it, as told by the villagers themselves.
When we first thought that the bonfire might have caused it, it was so much horror inside me that I just couldn't speak. The whole world collapsed before me, because it had been such a wonderful day, and this to happen to someone that no one in the whole world could possibly dream of hurting. She's an old lady, a dear old lady, and no one could possibly dream of hurting an old soul like that.
What were you doing while the fire burned?
While the fire burned, I ran back to phone the fire brigade, and soon after that the fire service came out. And then, quite honestly, my mind was a blank for a time until someone came and said, the firemen want tea. And I got as much hot water going as I possibly could, and I filled the tea. And then the next thing I remember, I was pouring cups of tea for the firemen. And this may sound strange to you, but after that, I remember very little of the whole evening. I suppose it must have been shock or something, but I remember nothing at all until about 11 o'clock that evening, and a friend of mine had made me, I'd hardly eaten anything all day long, and she'd made me eat a small chicken sandwich and a glass of sherry, and then I came back to the bonfire and we just sat and talked.
What did you do after you put the fire out, when you were just sitting there?
We came back, and some of them gradually drifted away home, and some of us sat around the embers of the bonfire, and we talked. It was a glorious evening. I remember after that it was a glorious evening. Perfect it would have been for our late evening supper, which we didn't get. And we just sat and talked and discussed the problem, and I don't know, there seemed very little that we could say to one another, really, because it was just enough to be sitting there with someone. You know, it was companionship that we needed at that time, and it was just enough for us to be near one another and be sitting because of this dreadful, dreadful thing that had happened to us in the whole of the evening.
Coming on board. Interview Tim Howe. Now, you were filming and the fire started. What happened?
Well, we saw that the fire was starting, and I ran over to the fire, and I knew I'd only got a few inches of film left. And I decided to use that up, and I trained it on the roof, and I kept going till I could hear the film running off the spool. And then I put the camera down and ran to help, do what I could. And they formed a chain, and they got all of the old lady's furniture out. And of course the old lady herself went out.
You didn't think to keep on filming?
Well, I couldn't. I got no film left. Got none in the house. And it's always away, that.
You were dressed as a clown, weren't you?
Yes, I was, and that was a dreadful thing because I'd forgotten I'd got makeup on, you see, and my husband came to me sometime in the evening, and it looked so grotesque. All this clown's makeup with tears, you know. It was horrible. And he said, "Can I please take it off because it looks so dreadful."
They said that if we could rebuild the village post box, which fell down when the wall fell down in the winter time, we could certainly rebuild the cottage. And it all started from the pillar box. And Mr. Harry's works in the building trade. And we said, well, if he can build that on his own, he could certainly run the cottage lot, you know, which he was virtually foreman, you might as well put it. He was asking us different jobs and what we could do, what we couldn't do, and we all just walked in and done everything.
Now it's all finished, how do you feel?
Well, I feel I've achieved something. I mean, bearing in mind the age of Mrs. Kettering, I mean, we'd do it for somebody that was 25, let alone nearly 95. So I just feel I've achieved something. I mean, I've lived in the village all my life, and the cottage is next door to my parents. And I should just like to think that the builder was going to come in and knock it down and alter the face of my own parents' house, like, you know. I mean, it's a cottage. I mean, people say we've rebuilt a cottage, but it's the biggest cottage in the village if people stop and look at it, which, I mean, really meant more work.
How do you feel now she's moved back in and it's all...
Oh, dead chuffed. No two ways about it, dead chuffed. Well, really, I should have been home till after 3, 4 o'clock this afternoon, but I've virtually broke the law, come down the motorway at 70 purposes to be home for her to come in. I ain't missing it, like, you know.
It's a good day for you.
Oh, most certainly, most certainly.
What about... You didn't get to drink the beer, did you? After the other Jubilee party?
We all had virtually half a pint in our hand. Somebody shouted a spark, and the beer went down, and that was the last we've seen of it. So that'll be going today, sort of thing.
How did you feel as you watched the fire go up?
Well, we just went dead. And we was all in fancy dress.
What were you in?
I was dressed as a Hawaiian lady, I was. With a grass skirt on, made a bagging string.
There, a big boy. Hello. Hello. No, you come out here. Have you made it? Come on. Come on. Little girl first. Yes, Mum. Come on. There you are. Look at all these people. Look. Look.
How do you feel now?
Marvellous. Absolutely marvellous. Oh, if you had time, I could run right on the green and laugh and shout and jump. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. She's back there. It's been one of the worst 3 months in the whole of my life. And I was so scared that things wouldn't go right, that something would happen, that she wouldn't get back into her cottage. And now she's there.
Interview Fred Howe.
How was it you got to building this thing? How did it actually happen to rebuild the house?
Well, you see, on the night of the fire, we said we would put right all the damage that was caused, and this we intended to do. And the next day, you see, Brian White, the godson of the old lady, came over, and he said he was a builder, and their insurance had been out, and the money was very small that they were going to get because it was underinsured.
Did it come out of a meeting? Did you have a meeting of some kind?
Yes, I had a meeting, but I wasn't at the first meeting because I had it middle day. And I agreed that what we said on the night that would be carried out.
How do you feel? I mean, was it hard work to building it all back up?
Not really, because, I mean, not for, as far as I was concerned. It was probably harder for some of the rest of the villagers because they were not used to that sort of work. But,
how do you feel now it's all done?
Very much relieved. Great relief to have it finished. Because we've been pent up for about 3 months now.
A sort of real feeling of satisfaction?
Oh, we're quite satisfied, and if it was the bonfire that caused it, you see, we can rest now. Our conscience is clear.
What, your conscience is clear?
It's clear, and we feel much the better for it.
What's the whole thing taught you? Has it taught you anything?
Well, it's taught us how easy things can happen, and how quickly. You see, 1 minute we were all enjoying ourselves, and the next minute it was tragedy.
How did that night feel?
It seemed a very long night from the time when the firemen came till the time the fire was under control and the people all left and went away. It was a very long and, cold night.
And so at last Mrs. Ketteringham has moved back in. Good neighbours, willing hands, you must be proud, for now the job is done. All summer long you've worked and slaved, and now we'll have some fun. Today, the village can finish its Jubilee party.
Come here then, a minute. Drying a bit faster, ain't they? Right, Dave, what do you want? Drying a bit faster, ain't they? Right, Dave, what do you want? Come in the office, look.
Mrs. Howe, on behalf of us all, will you accept this bouquet, not only for what you've done for us, but for all your kindness and generosity, for throwing your home open to us, not only on Jubilee Day, but on all the other days while we've been rebuilding Mrs. Ketteringham's house.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I can't say anything. I've lost my voice and I just can't. Thank you very much, everyone. And, well, I'm sorry it happened the way it did, but in a sense, to see all this, I'm almost glad. I'm almost glad that it happened because it's absolutely marvellous now anyway. Here's to you, everyone. Cheers. The rest of Jubilee year, good. Cheers. Thank you.
Will Mr. Howe know? Well done, Fred. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all the people in Little Kineton, I would like to present the gaffer, Fred Howe, with this lovely tankard for all the good work he's done in supervising and hard work as well, and everyone else what's restored Mrs. Ketteringham's cottage. There you are, Fred.
Thank you very much, Dave.
And before he says anything, I've got something else for him, which a cousin of mine has kindly turned on his lathe out of one of the window frames out of Mrs. Ketteringham's cottage. Is a pepper mill, so as he can remember all those hours he spent. And there's a note there with it, Fred.
Thank you very much, Fred. Well, I don't know, I can thank Little Kineton for this, because I was only one of 20 or more. But I greatly appreciate it. And if you'll thank Mrs. Ketteringham's nephew or cousin...
No, my cousin.
Oh, your cousin,
yeah,
for doing this, I'd be very much obliged. Thank you very much, all.
Hip hip! Hip hip!